Hi, I'm Andy, welcome to Python Puzzles. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on all the software you're going to need to run these puzzles. If you don't want to watch the rest of the video, download Python from python.org, download PyCharm from JetBrains. The link's in the description for these pieces of software. You could get away with using VS Code, but I will be using PyCharm. Download Git, it's the command line utility. Command line software allows you to use the git clone commands that we'll be using. GitHub Desktop's what I'll be using as a Git client. I think it comes with Git bundled, but definitely download GitHub Desktop. So that's really everything. I'll just take you through installing this software now. So go to python.org, click on downloads, and it looks like we'll be using Python 3.12.5. I don't think it really matters for most of these puzzles. They're fairly basic. I just download the latest version of Python. Okay, with it downloaded, I'll open it. Now, if you just click install now, it's going to install it in this complicated place. That's fine if you want to install it there. I'm going to customize my installation. Install now would be fine. So I'm just going to leave all this ticked, but I'm going to highlight that you absolutely want pip installed. This is the package manager that allows you to download and install other Python packages. You use this all the time with Python. Idle's like an old IDE, a very old IDE. You may as well have it. You'll need a test suite for tests later on, and you'll need the PyLauncher, so that's all good. I'll click next. I'll definitely want to associate .py files with Python and shortcuts. I'll add Python to the environment variable. This is just so that when you go into the command line and you type Python, well, the Windows computer knows where it is. And I think that's it. I'm going to change my install location. I don't like it being buried there. I'm going to go into my C drive, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I call it Python 12. You can call it whatever you want. I just like to have on the very top level of my C drive multiple versions of Python. I might have Python 10, Python 6, whatever. 3.6, 3.12. So I just call it Python 12. Well, actually, let's rename it. I don't want to teach you bad habits. _3_12. Okay. Select that. It's just easier for me. Click install. Okay, now in the Windows machine, I'm just going to show you how to double check that Python's added to your environment variable. So if I go to CMD, open a command prompt, when I type in Python, I want that to do something. So I hit enter and you see those 3 chevrons there. This means it knows what Python is. I can just type exit to get out of that. If Python isn't in your environment variables, that's not going to work. You're going to get an error. It's not going to know what the word Python means. So I just typed in environment there on Windows 11, edit the system environment variables. And then it's system properties, advanced environment variables. And you just have to make sure Python's in here. There's a path, and you can see Python's in there. So there's plenty of tutorials online of how to do this. You would just click edit, and you would just add Python in there. Okay. So that's been done for me by the compiler. Okay, next, PyCharm. This is probably the first IDE I ever used. I've always used it with Python. It's just made for Python. It's a very good IDE. For most other stuff, I use Visual Studio Code, but this has just kind of stuck with me as the best IDE for Python. So I'll just click download. Go into the download page. Now, you just want to make sure you're downloading the community edition of this, which is totally free. Community edition. So if you click this, it's going to give you like a free trial of the professional version. We don't want that. We want the 100% free community edition. So I'm Windows, so I'm just going to click download. Next, I'm just going to leave it in the default destination folder. I'm going to create a desktop shortcut for it. I'm going to add it to the bin folder, to the path. And yeah, to be honest, as default, when I click a .py file, I want it to open up in PyCharm. So you can call it JetBrains. I like to call it PyCharm. Let's let it do its thing. Okay, this is complete. You probably want to reboot your computer, but I'm just going to do it later. I've got another bunch of software to install. You could download Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio alone. It's going to have like a purple icon. It's for C# stuff. You will be downloading that if you're doing the C# puzzles in my C# puzzle channel. But this is like a very light version of it. It's called Visual Studio Code. And it's very, very popular. You can use this. I'll show you how to set up virtual environments on it. But for this whole series, I'm going to be using PyCharm. So it's up to yourself. And just to show you, I believe if I get rid of code and I hit enter, yeah, you see that says this is a full-sized Visual Studio, which you won't need. Okay, next, Git. So I've got like a PowerShell prompt open here. The command we'll be using to clone stuff is git clone, and then we'll type in the URL. So for example, I can go to my puzzles repository in GitHub, which is just a place to store all the code. Yeah, so this is all the code we're going to have for the puzzles, and you can copy the URL here and you can go into your command line and you can do git clone and you can paste it in. But this isn't going to work because it doesn't have git installed. My computer doesn't know what git means, okay? So to get this working, if we're going to be using the command line, we have to download git. So go to git-scm.com and click download. And I'll be downloading it for Windows. I'll be using 64-bit standalone installer. I'm happy just to leave it in program files git as normal. Yep, sorry, I've obviously had it installed before. Like that looks okay for me. I definitely want git to be in there. I don't need new updates for it. Yeah, okay, next. Yep, that looks fine. Now, this is difficult. I would not use Vim. Vim is a very hard to use sort of editor. So this is just like if you click a git related file, what should open it? You could use Visual Studio Code. I would probably use Notepad++ or just Notepad that comes bundled with Windows. I'm going to use Notepad++. We're not going to use this in this course, but it's up to yourself. There is a link for it there. Click next. Yeah, let's get this side next. So I'm going to go with the recommended option here. Again, I'm going to go with the recommended Open SSH that's bundled with it. Going to go with the recommended Open SSL. So it's just next finish on most of this. Going to go with checkout Windows style, yeah. So this is really asking you how when you run it, do you want it to come with its own little terminal that's kind of highlights everything for Git? I'm just going to use that. You could use this option, which is Windows default console, but I don't mind using this little console application that will pop up. So fast forward or merge, yeah, stick with that. Yep, just next finish. And install it. Okay, so there's lots of options there because Git can be really technical. I don't need to view the release notes. Okay, so now if I type in Git, you should see this. So we don't even need to use any of this stuff for these puzzles, but if we click Git GUI, you've kind of like got a very basic GUI. It's too basic for you to use, really. You want to use GitHub Desktop. If you hit Git CMD, this command thing will pop up, and you can type in commands. And if we hit Git Bash, this would be like this Minty sort of thing. See, it's all just highlighted. Doesn't really matter. For our purposes, we just need to install it. Now, if I type in Git clone, it's going to know what I'm talking about now, and it's going to clone that into whatever folder I want it to be cloned into. I don't want it in my C drive. I've created a folder called Git repos on my C drive, which I'm just going to go into now. CD for change directory, and then I'm going to type in git clone and then paste in that URL, and it should work now. Nope, it's not in the system. Sorry, this is an old window. I have to close and reopen the window. Just let me close that. Yep, CD, I'll go to C drive, I'll go to Git repos, I'll do git clone, paste that in, it'll work this time. So if you've got a command window open, you have to refresh it to make it take effect. Okay, so that's actually a good error to show you. So if I go to C drive, Git repos, here's the code. It's downloaded it for me using this command. I don't want to use the command line to clone stuff and use stuff. If you see it everywhere in YouTube, I want you to use GitHub Desktop, which is what we're using next. Now this is what's called a Git client or a Git GUI or whatever. It's basically an easier way of managing everything other than the command line. It might seem like, hey Andy, all I did was type in git clone and paste in this HTTPS URL and I've downloaded all your code. You know, what's the problem? Well, the problem is in later part of your career, as soon as you get a job, you're going to be working with part of a team, and everyone's going to be uploading and downloading and cloning and forking and all this Git stuff all at the same time in different branches. And using the command lines, it's just too difficult, especially when you have to sort of sift through branches and do merges and all this stuff. It's much better just to use a Git client, and that way it's kind of like a graphical representation. So I'm going to go to desktop.github.com and click download. Let it go. While it's downloading, another alternative that's very popular is SourceTree, and you can kind of see what it looks like here. You've got your various branches and your commits by the different users. I mean, imagine trying to do all this in command line. I did use command line at first, and then I started using one of these Git clients, and I found it a bit difficult because it's kind of like there's more options in these Git clients than a fighter jet, you know, than flying a fighter jet. But once you get to know it, it's just so much easier than using command line. There's a bit of a learning curve, which is why I think you should just learn to use them now. So you can use Source Tree, but I'm warning you, there's a bit of a learning curve. GitHub Desktop's a lot simpler for beginners. So now that that's downloaded, let's install it. There we go. That's it installed, and you would go to File, Clone Repository, go to the URL, paste it in there, and then just make sure that the path's correct. So yeah, it's because we've already downloaded it, guys, that's why that error's there, but that's what you would do. I'll show you this at the start of every puzzle, just so you know what you're doing, or at least the first 4 or 5 puzzles anyway. So that's GitHub Desktop, and yeah, that's basically everything you need. One last final mention: I see a lot of people haven't used this before, which is the new Windows Terminal. So I can get multiple tabs here, and I can use Command Prompt as well as PowerShell. There is a difference. So you might be using just a regular Command Prompt, or if you type in PowerShell. Both of these come sort of standard, so it's opened up this. But the reason I like it's the tabs, because you might have something running in this, like something running actual software, but you want to type in separate commands in a separate window. So I got this by going to Microsoft Store, and it's called Windows Terminal. Just type in Terminal, and you can just download it. I think it's a much improved version of the Command Prompt. And that's really everything you need to run these puzzles.